I therefore call on Government Orders of the Day numbers 1 through 3.
Government Communications Security Bureau Amendment Bill, third reading. Inspector General of Intelligence and Security Amendment Bill, third reading. Intelligence and Security Committee Amendment Bill, third reading.
Mr. Speaker.
I call on the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable John Key.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Government Communications Security Bureau Amendment Bill, the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security Amendment Bill and the Intelligence and Security Committee Amendment Bill be now read a third time. Mr. Speaker, this is an essential bill which has attracted a lot of debate, much of it alarmist. It is one of the strengths of our country that people who oppose legislation have the opportunity to do so. That's their right, whether or not they understand what the legislation actually does. Some people are fundamentally opposed to the work of the intelligence agencies. Those critics oppose the agencies almost on principle. As Prime Minister, I am not one of those people. That's because I have access to evidence which shows that without the GCSB and SIS, our national security would be vulnerable. There are threats our government needs to protect New Zealanders from. Those threats are real and ever-present, and we underestimate them, Mr. Speaker, at our peril. New Zealanders are entitled to expect that their security is something the government takes seriously, and we do, and we take it very seriously. But we cannot say we take it seriously and then not make the tools available to allow our security services to do their job. That is the opposite of taking security seriously, and that is something I will never do. Over the past 4.5 years, Mr. Speaker, that I have been Prime Minister, I have been briefed by intelligence agencies on many issues, some that have deeply concerned me. If I could disclose some of the risks and threats from which our security services protect us, I think it would cut dead some of the most fanciful claims that I've heard lately from those who oppose this bill. But to disclose that work publicly would in some cases jeopardise it, and so I can't. I can only assure New Zealanders that GCSB is necessary and valuable contributor to our national security, just as my predecessor, Helen Clark, said much the same thing a couple of weeks ago. Today, as the House debates this bill, I think it's important we all know why it's needed. Mr. Speaker, it isn't a revolution in the way New Zealand conducts its intelligence operations. It's not about expanding the powers of a mysterious intelligence empire. It simply makes clear what the GCSB may and may not do, and it fixes an act passed under the Labor government a decade ago, which is not, and probably never has been, fit for purpose. So, Mr. Speaker, it is a great shame to see Labor now running away from sorting out the problems it created. But here in the National Party, Mr. Speaker, I recognise the importance of national security, and I'm pleased that John Banks and Peter Dunn do too. I acknowledge Mr Dunn and Mr Banks for their efforts to strengthen this legislation. It is a better bill for their input. Mr Speaker, the bill makes clear the GCSB's three functions. These are information assurance and cyber security, foreign intelligence and assisting other agencies. The first of these functions allows the GCSB to help protect government organisations and important private sector entities from cyber attacks. This is a growing threat which targets our information and the intellectual property of our best and brightest. Already this year, the number of logged cyber attacks incidents is larger than it was for all of last year. GCSB's specialist skills can help protect departments and companies, and this bill gives it a clear mandate to do that. A lot has been said about this, so I want to be clear about a few things. Firstly, cybersecurity is about protecting our secrets. It is not about spying. The bill requires GCSB to get a warrant from the Independent Commissioner of Security Warrants and me before it can intercept a New Zealander's communications. That warrant must be issued for a particular function, in this case cybersecurity. The clear intention of the function is to protect, not to spy. The bill also allows for conditions to be put on warrants, and I intend to do just that. I will not allow cybersecurity warrants in the first instance to give GCSB access to the content of New Zealanders' communications. There will be times, Mr Speaker, where a serious cyber intrusion is detected against a New Zealander, and the GCSB will then need to look at the content. That's why the bill allows for that. But that should be the end point, not the starting point. So I intend to use a two-step process for warrants, requiring the GCSB to come back and make the case for a new warrant to access content only where the content is relevant to a specific threat. I also expect the GCSB to have the consent of the New Zealander involved unless there is a very good reason not to. The second function of the GCSB is, as I said, collecting foreign intelligence. That, by the way, is the largest proportion of the agency's work. The third function allows the GCSB to assist the police, NZSIS and the Defence Force. This is something it's been doing for more than a decade, including under the previous government. At all times, the GCSB believed it was acting lawfully, as did the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security and successive Prime Ministers. This is because GCSB Act said it could assist others, but it's an Act it also stated it couldn't undertake surveillance on New Zealanders. No agency should operate with such an ambiguous legal framework. The Kitteridge Review identified just 88 cases of assistance over 10 years, an average of under 9 people a year. So this isn't and never will be about wholesale spying on New Zealanders. The truth is that GCSB has unique capabilities, and it makes no sense, Mr Speaker, to duplicate those when they are so rarely used. Instead, we will make it clear GCSB can only assist those three agencies, and only when they are able to show they have the lawful authority to undertake the surveillance themselves. Mr Speaker, nothing in this bill allows for wholesale spying on New Zealanders. Nothing. The bill actually tightens, it does not widen the existing regime. I also want to be clear about another issue in the bill, and that is metadata. There have been claims that this bill offers no protection of metadata and allows for wholesale collection of metadata without a warrant. None of that is true. Metadata is treated the same in the bill as content of a communication. So when the GCSB wants to access metadata, it is treated with the same level of seriousness and protection as if the GCSB was accessing the actual content of communication. And there are protections around that. Mr Speaker, the bill is good legislation, and it is necessary legislation. It fixes the problems with the current Act and clears up the ambiguities that Labor passed into law a decade ago. It puts in place a robust review of the intelligence agencies in 2015 and every 5 to 7 years thereafter. It requires more transparency through open public hearings for the financial reviews of the intelligence agencies. It requires GCSB to tell New Zealanders how many times it assisted other agencies and how many warrants and authorisations have been issued. It gives GCSB a set of guiding principles that acknowledges the importance of human rights, independence, integrity and professionalism. And it puts in place a stronger oversight regime that will go some way to rebuilding confidence in GCSB. Mr Speaker, let me finish by saying this. I have rarely seen so much misinformation and conspiracy about a subject as has been perpetrated about this bill. That has some citizens agitated the alarm, for which I regret. But my regret about this would be nothing compared with the regret if this measure was not passed and New Zealanders were harmed because of the gap that currently exists in our security arrangements. This bill is being passed today because its provisions are needed today. They are needed right now because there are threats against us right now. Others may play politics with this security and lives of New Zealanders, but I cannot and will not do so. That, Mr Speaker, is why I commend this very good piece of legislation and this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Mr Speaker.
I call